Hello and welcome to the Housing.com webinar on the impact that the COVID-19 pandemic is having on construction timelines. I'm Jhamur Ghosh, Editor-in-Chief, Housing.com News, and joining us today are panelists Abhishek Kapoor, who's the CEO, Residential Puravankara Limited. Hi, Abhishek.
Hi. Thank you for
Amit
having
Modi,
me here, Jhamur.
Hi. Amit Modi is the President-elect for CREDAI Western UP, and he's also Director, ABA Corp. Hi, Mr. Modi.
Hi everyone.
Venkat Rao, he's the founder and the managing partner for Integrate Law Services, and he's also the legal advisor to UP RERA. Hi, Mr. Rao.
Thank you. Hi, good afternoon.
So great to have you all on board. I'm going to get right onto the questions. So recently the force majeure clause was invoked. This has been a very steady demand from the sector for quite some time now. Ever since the pandemic broke out, developers have been demanding that the force majeure clause under RERA be invoked. So my question to you is two-pronged. Firstly, Mr. Rao, it would be great if you could just explain a little bit about what the force majeure clause entails. And Abhishek and Mr. Modi, it would be great if you could explain the significance of this clause. Why is it so crucial for the sector in this market condition? So Mr. Rao, let's start with you.
Yeah, so primarily what happens is that while a project is registered by a promoter, he is required to give a certain timeline within which the project is supposed to be completed. Now, that timeline is kind of a sacrosanct kind of a thing. And if you miss that, that is, if promoter misses it, he could be hauled up majorly, and penalties could go up to 5%, 10% of the project cost. Now, in the context of that, what had happened is that every promoter self-declares it, and the registration is valid till that certain period that the declaration has come through. Now, Section 6 is one of those sections which, after Section 5, when a Section 5 certification is provided by the RERA, Section 6 is an accommodating provision which actually says that if at all a promoter is not in a position to complete a particular project at a certain point in time, then he can seek an extension for about, at the most, in a consolidated fashion, up to a year. Now, this force majeure clause, if you see in RERA, is very tightly worded clause. It is given that you can get any extension in case if you have a force majeure situation, which is war, flood, or any natural calamity. Now, only in such situation you tend to get an extension. Now, having said that, this pandemic naturally. There was no clarity as to whether this will strictly fall in the category of force majeure under RERA, and thereby there was a fear that those projects which were about to be completed after this pandemic has happened, or even for those projects which are going on, there is a possibility that they would be hit by the lockdown and entire work coming to a standstill. Naturally, definitely, promoters demanded it, and the government also considered it. And I would say a reasonable period was supposed to be given, which naturally was initially, if you look at Maharashtra came out, was the first of the blocks, and it came out with a 3-month extension. Then followed by Karnataka.
Then Karnataka came out here.
Yes. So, but then meanwhile, there was this demand going on, and therefore, a standard directive, or rather an advisory, has been issued by a Ministry of Urban Development to all the RERAs that you could, invoking Section 6, actually extend these timelines by 6 months. And in case of any specific state or any specific project, it could be further extended by a period of 3 months. Now, this was essential primarily because, one, the project construction and development would have got hit, and it was already impacted. And if you look at my take as a legal portion, is that there would have been just not a force majeure of a certain period. Invariably, force majeure is for a certain period. I'll just take one more minute and then come through. Force majeure means invariably, if you see a flood, during flood, it gets covered. So certain period of time, which is during only that period of flood, it would be covered as a force majeure, not pre or maybe post, which would have actually impacted the development of the project. The same would have been the situation here also. The lockdown period, had they defined, it should have been maybe 60 months or so. But if, I mean, 60 days or so. God forbid 60 months. So having said that, so the demand was, in a real estate, it is not possible for any project to be immediately restarted if it comes to a stop. You know, even for mobilization of a site, it usually takes about 2 weeks to 3 weeks. I mean, there are experts who know better than me. They are project executioners. So in such a situation, it was not possible if a project comes to a halt to actually start it off immediately. A. B, there was an exodus of labor. B, that labor would have impacted majorly, you know, the execution of the project. C, supply chain would have definitely got hit majorly. I mean, so all these aspects wouldn't have been easy for possible that it would have come back within 3 months or 4 months. So they gave a reasonable time for extension.
Abhishek, do you think that the 6-month extension, do you think it's absolutely the breather, you know, that the sector needed right now? What's your take on this announcement?
Sure. So, you know, when this whole COVID lockdown started towards the end of March, government gave directions to completely stop movement of any kind of logistics, any material movement, any work on any site, any offices. Everything was shut down. Basically, it was a complete 100% lockdown. Since then, as Venkat mentioned, everything that a site requires came to a complete standstill. We have, in fact, the easing of the lockdown has started now. But if you look at some of the data points, if we were at currently, I would think we when the lockdown partially started opening, we were at about 40% of our labor strength as people started migration back. Now, this is something which is already happening across the country. It's all over the news. Everybody's watching. You know, so first thing as a developer, what we did was we wanted to look after our labor, ensure that they stay on, and ensure that the business continuity happens. So we took care of their health, we took care of their food, we ensured there was high hygiene, there was engagement on site, social distancing, training, and so on and so forth. While all across developers and contractors invested in trying to protect our people, what has happened is right towards the end of it, when the lockdown is easing and the time to start work is there, there is migration, which is basically all of these guys wanting to go back. Now, there are multiple reasons that we understand they want to go back. Largely, there's a lot of safety and security concerns that they have. They want to go back to their family. They have been isolated. They haven't earned money for quite some time. Even the government is doing whatever they can. We have done whatever we could. But now from 40, we are seeing it's come down to almost 25% already, and this is still continuing. So we are heading in a direction where it seems that this is going to be a complete slowdown of work, how much ever we might want to engage and start. So that is part number one. Part number two is that interstate movement of goods has been completely disrupted. Supply chain was completely disrupted. Without material, you cannot produce. So that is the second reason which we are trying to streamline now, and slowly we are getting there. But having said that, I need to also mention that the cement prices have gone through the roof. We can't seem to understand as to why they have gone through the roof. The costs are going up. For what reason, we can't understand that. And the developers are struggling to kind of get the whole system back in place. I mean, there's a complete pause. And at this point in time, we are only seeing further slowdown. We haven't seen the pace pick up. So I think, government recognized that this is the challenges that the sector is facing. And at this point in time, in everybody's interest, developers have also incurred overheads. We haven't stopped our overheads. Interest costs, though deferred, principal repayments, though deferred, a lot of developers might have taken that also. It hasn't stopped. So the cost has only risen for the developer. The production hasn't happened. And, there's a complete slowdown. So, I think this was really, really needed. And yeah.
Mr. Modi, you've also spoken about, the impact, that the labor situation and even the raw material situation. As a matter of fact, I think we also need to talk about the fact that traditionally, we have relied very sure that, that will also be a challenge, going forward. So, I mean, do you think that the 6-month extension that has been given, that sort of, is going to give a breather, considering the current situation? What's your take, Mr. Modi?
No, so for current situation, 6 months is fine, but it hasn't stopped now because whatever Abhishek and Venkat has said, it is not, the lockdown is still continuing as far as supply chain is concerned, labor, liquidity. I want to add in Abhishek's thing, the liquidity crisis also there. As far as financial institutions problem are also there, and we are not able to sell the goods at this moment because all the marketing offices are closed now. No receipts are happening. Previously, we were selling around 30 to 40 crore rupees of monthly receipts were there. Now receipts are totally nil. So apart from material prices rising, labor is not there, supply chain is not up to mark, and moreover, if any containment zone is there, you are not able to start the construction. If you have started the construction now, it will stop again because as soon as it comes into containment zone, you have to stop the work for another 14 days or 21 days. So the problems are still at large, and this 6 months is because all EMI has been deferred, not waived off. So these kind of costs, promoters' contribution is all their capital has been invested, financial institutions' capital is there, and all the interest are going on. Only giving a 6-month breather for construction is not enough. So this is not any kind of benefit, but definitely it has to be an automation process, that this kind of force majeure clause has to be seen, that how much more impact is going to be there. And I think we request the government to increase it further, another, I think, maybe 6 months more, because even Rajasthan RERA has given 1 year period for construction. Though UP is, they were considering 1 year, but after the announcement of 6 months and 3 months, it is a different situation now. But as far as NCR concerned, because from November to February, because of Supreme Court's NGT guideline, 3 months construction work was not going on in NCR. So we have a totally different case as far as if we speak about NCR, then we should be getting around 1 year timeline for construction from RERA.
So, essentially what the home buyers, because we've received a lot of questions on these lines. So what we've figured out is, now the home buyer, he is trying to gauge, what will be the impact of this. So we are getting questions like, will it be a straight cut 6-month delay? Should I buffer in for, more time? And I think I'd like to set some context here. I think in the pre-COVID times, everybody knew that the established developers, they used to keep a 1 year buffer, when they were giving dates on the RERA website. The home buyers were also aware of it. They were planning accordingly. So now, right now, again, the home buyer is feeling a little lost. He doesn't know that what kind of a buffer, am I supposed to keep? Is it going to be 6 months? Is it going to be more than 6 months? So how can we guide them? Abhishek, what's your take on this?
So, Jumar, my point here is that no developer ever wants to delay a project. Let me tell you, every day that a project gets delayed, a developer is only going to bleed because he is already sold. Costs are not in his control because costs are driven by market. Interest is ticking every day. Market dynamics are changing. The cycle of the business is changing. So, no developer wants to delay a project. Now, if things normalize, I'm very confident as so. Okay, so let me just segregate this in a couple of parts. My view is that larger developers, branded, strong developers, which is an extremely a category which has been in the business for a long time, who continues to be in business and intends to be in the business for a very long time, will put in all the hard work and effort to ensure the project is not only delivered in time, but before time. That's the intent with which most of the large brands operate. The objective is obviously all of the above. My overhead is ticking, my interest is ticking, the costs are there. So, you don't want to delay the project. That's point number one. The faster you build the project, the better is in everybody's interest, including the customer, of course. And of course, now the second piece is RERA as an authority. Since the time it has come in, there's a lot of transparency. There's a lot of commitment. The sector is far more organized. So if you are in that piece of the developer, the branded, organized, large developers who have a history of track record and delivery, then you are in one bucket. The second bucket is a completely different bucket. Now there it's an area of concern, but in the first bucket, I think that doesn't worry me much if I am a consumer, because we know that they will make sure and they will work towards delivering it as quickly as possible.
Mr. Rao, if you had to advise your clients right now about, how should they be reading the situation, what would you be telling them?
So while Abhishek is right on one side of the two buckets of the developers, I would put even projects into two set of segments, especially for the buyers. One is those projects where we see that there is this force majeure clause is extending, giving additional time to the developers. We should not look at it from one simple aspect of, you losing out on 6 months. One has to look at it in two levels. That's the reason why I'm saying that the projects need to be split into two. One is those projects which were already delayed. So there have been much delay there, and I can understand, and you can understand the frustration of a lot of buyers who would be, entire RERA or, all these aspects coming into picture have been that there have been huge delays. Let's be clear about it. So those buyers would definitely be, frustrated. They would certainly litigate. They would come back and say that, look, this COVID is a situation which happened in 2020. Had you delivered the project in, the time that you had mentioned it to me in my buyer agreement, I would have been well off. Now, at a certain point in time, as Abhishek has rightly pointed out, it is now a cost trigger of, even on interest trigger of about 10.5%. So that's there on their head. It is right across their neck. But then the problem is today buyer says, I don't want interest, I want my project. So to those buyers, it's a challenge. It's a very big challenge for them to even wait for another 6 months. So that's one thing which probably developers have to face. But rest of the developers who have registered themselves and actually are in a position or planning to do a project would have to be given this kind of a space, and buyers also would understand, yes, that it is not possible for somebody in such a situation to complete and would wait. And these buyers have actually entered pretty, late. Maybe they would have entered last year or maybe a year before. So for them, another 6 months or 8 months, which is already factored into a general buyer agreement, would not be much of an issue. But for those projects which are already delayed, which are 5-7 year delayed, there would be much litigation happening, and we would have to come up with something. But then this is a frustrating period. Nobody can help. They may lose a certain portion of their interest for this period, but they have to live with it.
Yeah. Mr. Modi, you come from a market, where again, traditionally, a project delay has unfortunately been like a very common occurrence. So how would you like to guide buyers, in terms of how should they be reading the situation, in terms of how much project delay should they be buffering in for? How should they analyze the situation?
See, I would put it like this. Suppose, it is very difficult to give the exact timeline, because seeing the current situation, it is very difficult for anyone to give timelines, because we don't know the recent future, what is going to be the recent future also, because the virus is going to stay for another 6 months or 8 months, we don't know. And what kind of further lockdowns we are going to face. But the existing problem of labor, material, supply chain, it is still existing. And rightly said by Abhishek that 25% of the labor is there. And in that 25% labor also, how many skilled people are there? Are we able to get the 25% of the job done or not? Out of this 25% level, we are going to get only 15% of job done. So exact timeline to tell is difficult, but definitely when buffer zone is there with the or moreover, what stage is at your construction, what timeline you have given to your customer. Suppose you have given 5 years and the construction is going to take 3.5 years. So I believe within that time we'll be able to complete it. And if the project is very initial stage right now, and after 6 months we have ample labor, ample liquidity, and ample materials, and no issues are there, then definitely we can work at 150% and we can make up the time. So exact timeline is difficult, but I think 8 to 9 months is a reasonable time that every project will get late by 8 to 9 months minimum in present scenario.
Okay. So, the logical sort of, progression of this question clearly with our audience has been, then, so what is the right thing for me to buy right now? Should I be looking at under construction properties? Should I be buying a ready to move? So that is again, a question that has come up, with a lot of our audience members. So how do we, what kind of advice can we give them? How should they choose?
See, as far as buying of property is concerned, I'll tell you, so suppose if we take a case example of 1 crore property take. So suppose 20% of the payment you make from your own resources and 80%, suppose 80 lakhs housing loan, you go for it. So for 20 years loan, if you are taking a house for yourself, so I think I would suggest everyone to take the property while it is under construction, when the project has loan, because at that time prices are cheaper. And you get a loan of, you can say, around 850 rupees or 840 rupees EMI per lakh is there for a 20-year loan. So for 80 lakh loan, you spend around 65,000 rupees a month. And for a 1 crore apartment, if you are living in a 1 crore apartment, instead of that, you are living in a rented apartment, you are spending around 25,000 rupees or 20,000 rupees. So you are shelling out around 40,000 more. And if you see the long-term aspect of the property, then around in 8 years time, you see the property that in 4 years property will be built. And after that, you take the possession and then you start living another 4 years in that particular property. So after 8 years, you pay around 60 lakhs rupees to the bank in your EMIs. 20 lakh you have paid to the developer in the beginning. So after 8 years down the line, if the property is 1.5 times also, then you don't lose your money. So I would suggest that everyone who can afford to take a home loan, and they can take, they are eligible for home loan, they should buy the property immediately. There's no question that they shouldn't buy.
So Abhishek, what's your take on the ready to move versus, under construction property in this current market condition?
So what I would say is that, if RTM ready to move is obviously the safest buy. It will be priced typically higher, as Amitji said, in terms of under construction versus ready to move in. The advantage is it's completely safe. You have it today, it's in your hand, it's fine. The moment you come to under construction, I think it's very, very important for the buyers to understand who they are buying from. And I think that is what will matter eventually. Is the credibility there of the developer? Is the delivery track record there of the developer? And is he continuing to do operations at any given point in time? How has been his speed of progress in last 6 months or 9 months when they have been monitoring, or they can check in the marketplace? So what's very important is to check the delivery and the credibility of the developer when you're buying an under construction property. One thing I must say, that people get very, very, I would say, digressed by deep discounting. Now, the moment you have a developer giving this deep discounting, the biggest concern that is there is he is trying to manage his cash flows. The money is not going to go in the project, which is something that people should be very, very careful about. I would rather pay a premium to a large developer and make sure that the developer is credible, he's capable of delivering, my money is protected because it's his brand for last 20, 30, 40 years in which he's been delivering. So it's very important to be very clear from whom you are buying. If you're buying an under construction asset, I would, as a consumer, I would completely shy away from very, very deep discounting projects, because then the money is not going into the project. I think that is the biggest concern, and I continue to voice it everywhere, only in the interest of the consumers. Don't look at the price alone. Look at the credibility, look at the brand, look at the progress, and all of that is far more important. Under construction obviously gives you far more flexibility in terms of planning your cash flows, planning your life, how much you are paying right now. You can buy something earlier in your career and hence you have easily 20 years to pay it off. So there are a lot of advantages in buying an under construction property. So obviously I kind of agree with Amitji, under construction makes a lot of sense in many ways, but a developer profile and the delivery capability is very, very important.
Mr. Rao,
I would
from
like
a
to add
legal
one thing, Jumur.
yes, please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, there are two types of projects going on. One of the projects which are has been launched 4 or 5 years back, and they are still under construction. So I'm not suggesting the clients to buy those things. Definitely they can see those also. But the people, after so much of disruptions and all those things, and they have launched the project within a year or 6 months or just 3 months, they are, I think, they manage their cash flows well in the past, and now also they are registered with all RERA authorities with due permissions and manage all kind of cash flows and capital. So in those projects, if they invest now, so they'll get good prices, and mathematical sense is there in those projects, and it is going to be beneficial for the new customers. But at the same time, the projects which are getting completed and all inventory is there, if the prices suits them and they see that mathematical benefit to them is there in the completed projects, then they can go for that also. There is no harm in that also.
Yeah. Mr. Rao, from a legal point of view, if you were to answer this ready to move versus under construction, does anything change? Are there any nuances there? What's your take?
Well, from the legal perspective, it is very simple, isn't it? It's a finished and completed deliverable project. You have no construction linked risk. I'll straight away go and have my title and be happy with it. Now, definitely, the challenges are, in case of a buyer agreement, you have all these challenges, including COVID's coming through, going away, liquidity being there, not being there, heavy, discounts that Abhishek was just mentioning to manage cash flows, fancied kind of schemes would also flow into the market. And in fact, what we look at it, at least what I look at it is that there would be projects which would be very fancily launched as they used to be launched prior to all these RERA and all, where pre-launch used to be one of those mechanisms which I'm very much fearing in these days that could probably be coming back in some other fancied fashion. So yes, a developer has to be checked. His track record has to be checked, as rightly Amitji has pointed out. Those who have seen much murkier matters for past 5 years, they have been surviving, been there in the markets. So please have a look at your track record of the developer. Please look at the brand, as Abhishek has pointed out. Look at how they have managed their existing project, what deliveries they have done. And if your pocket permits at this stage, please go ahead and buy one.
Yeah. We've received some questions around redevelopment timelines as well. I know it's a bit of a niche segment, but I'd like to sort of, just take it up. So we've had, some of our audience members, write into us, and what they'd like to know is, the way, obviously the current projects are getting impacted, will the delivery timelines of redevelopment projects also get impacted, and what kind of an impact are we looking at? So, Mr. Rao, what do you think?
So look, this force majeure clause is mostly governed by the interstate contract.
Yeah.
The redevelopment, you naturally have this, the society that having this contract with the developer. Now, mostly these redevelopment contracts would certainly have this factored in as to all kinds of situations. And in such a situation, I would personally believe, because looking at force majeure being invoked by RERA and even courts looking at it in a fashion, there would definitely be, even if there is a litigation, there would definitely be some kind of a relief will be given to the developer. And therefore, in a way, there would certainly be an extension of that timelines there also.
All right. Abhishek, we were speaking about this earlier as well. So, could you just share, how you think the redevelopment projects will pan out in the current scenario?
So I will kind of break it into pieces where you need to see at what stage of redevelopment is the project. If it's an early stage project where the site has not been vacated, as in the existing occupiers are continuing to stay in the site, and it's a development agreement has been signed and approvals and sanctions have been applied for. That's a different category of, so that means there is still time, you are still in your home. Yes, maybe there will be a delay because sanctions will get delayed. The current liquidity crunch may defer some of these launches, and hence there will be a little bit of a deferment, but you are in your home as a owner, and there is obviously no customer because that whole process has not reached that stage. So that is one part of it. If you are even before that, where a development agreement has not been signed, I think this will take a slightly longer period to rebound for developers to show you interest in terms of coming and developing your property. And I think they will also wait to see how things pan out and how the liquidity pans out. In this, the third category is where you are halfway. The third category is where you're halfway into the development, early stage, mid stage, or final stage of the development. If you're at the final stage of the development and you are about to get your project in 6 months, then you should definitely factor in 6 months delay, because this 6 months it's unlikely for any developer to cover up. If you are in the middle stage of the project, there is a likelihood that the developer might try and cover up as much as possible if he has some buffer to catch up on the construction. If it is early stage, then the probability of him trying to cover is higher. So broadly, I think one should factor in some amount of delay across the board in all three stages, all three categories. But it's more dependent on project to project and in which stage of the development is there right now.
Mr. Modi, would you like to add anything?
No, I'll fully agree with Abhishek, because it depends from at what stage the construction is rightly elaborated it, and I'm okay with this.
Yeah. So I'd like to switch gears a little, and it's only because, again, we've received a lot of questions on this line. So Mr. Rao, I'd like to address this to you specifically. So a lot of buyers, they have written back to us saying that, okay, we understand the sector needs help, and the government has, helped them, by invoking the force majeure clause. But what happens to me? Is there any benefit that is coming to me? Are my rights protected in any way? Mr. Rao is smiling already. So what would we like to tell buyers? Is there anything in it for them right now, the way the law reads right now?
Look, unfortunately, you can't have a blanket extension the way developers could get it in case of individual contracts. Whatever little bit that could be done by way of EMIs, postponement has already been done or advised. Even there has been some bit of resistance from the banks. So now coming to the aspect of developers giving away any kind of a leeway during this period. For all practical purposes, I see it to be more of a litigation matter rather than straight away somebody giving away something. One has to understand that if there are already dues to be recovered, which are definitely linked to construction mostly, so naturally they would have done work prior to the period of stoppage, and therefore they are rightly there to claim those dues. Now during this period, they have not done any construction. When I mean they, developers wouldn't have. Naturally, they in any case can't claim any kind of installments. Now, coming to the aspect of interest on any outstanding dues from this period. Now, that I would say would probably most of the developers that at least I know, a few of them branded, I just said, have actually extended some kind of a moratorium during this period. It would be more contractual and self-driven by the promoters, which are branded, large ones. They understand the cash flows also. And otherwise also, it has been a general practice in industry, in that as much I know, that they usually at a certain point in time have been waiving off interest from the buyers, which probably could be the case here also. But otherwise, I don't see that there would be any possibility of a blanket kind of a thing coming in. Yes, courts may, if it gets litigated, may look at it with compassion and may come up with some kind of a solution. That is also on an individual contract to contract basis. So having said that, this would be more individual contract driven. I don't see any blanket kind of a thing coming through.
Yeah, Mr. Modi, you're also a CREDI member. So do you get the sense, because we've received a lot of questions, again, the same thing that, oh, I'm continuing to pay EMI and, if there's a delay, I still continue to pay EMI. Is there anything that developers, can do for us? So, just the compassion or, just the understanding that Mr. Rao spoke about, when you speak to your peers and you speak to your colleagues, are you getting that sense, that even developers, acknowledge that just like it's a difficult time for them, it's a difficult time for the home buyer as well, and it's in everybody's best interest to sort of find a middle path. What has been your experience? How are you and your peers dealing with it?
We were having a lot of talk with our members and colleagues and everyone in the market also regarding this, that in these times you are not able to receive the EMIs or your whatever down payments were there and all those things you were not able to receive. But we have sorted out one thing among all members, that we must try to avoid all kind of litigations as far as this period is concerned. We have to accommodate our customers because they are also everything. The whole world is standstill. So we must accommodate them and sort out the ways so that there's no litigation as far as this period is concerned.
Yeah. Abhishek, you come from a market, where obviously the home buyers are educated, they are a lot more legally aware as well. So what's the sense that you're getting, how are developers, such as in this current scenario?
So I think so two parts to this. I think there is a huge opportunity for a lot of customers. If you heard the finance minister's speeches, actually series of speeches, she did bring about a credit-linked subsidy scheme. They have extended it for affordable housing, where household income between 6 and 18 lakhs. If you're an end user, first-time buyer, there is an extension. So there is a huge opportunity for the new buyers there to avail this subsidy scheme, which will, as Amit you was saying earlier, it will benefit a lot of people because it brings down the the gap between rent and the outflow when you make a purchase. So I think that's a big opportunity. As many people as possible should avail this opportunity. So that's one advantage that has come out of this whole thing, which the government has proposed for the buyers. So I think this will spur demand. So that is one part of it. The second piece in this whole thing is, I think most of the branded developers and large developers generally tend to, and majority of people who are in the business for the long run tend to accommodate customer situations in the sense that you could have a loss of life, loss of employment, various situations happen in the course of a buying cycle, because a buying cycle is fairly long. So, you typically tend to support a customer who might have gone into a situation which is a special situation, and you will address that special situation in a special manner. Obviously, nobody wants to litigate because, it doesn't make sense. The whole point is that, if there's a genuine problem, then you need to address the problem. I mean, there is no way a family which had made a buying decision at a certain stage and the circumstances have changed can do anything about it, and therefore there has to be accommodative behavior from the developers. So if you look at it, a large number of developers will accommodate such situations. So I think there is a lot of comfort in that sense. And, ever since RERA has come in, there is a lot of comfort because all the organized players are dealing with this whole thing very differently. And I think my view is that this is a good time to buy for everybody.
Yeah, Mr. Dow, we're talking about, rightly so that, right now everybody is going to try and avoid litigations. My question is, what about the existing litigations? There's already a huge backlog in the courts. I'm sure the lockdown hasn't helped matters at all. So, we have received some questions, that what happens to existing cases? Can you give us some clarity?
Okay, so a couple of things. One is naturally RERAs across the country or new setups, and therefore the aspect of having video conferencing, so on and so forth, hearings through video are a new thing for them. It has been so even to the courts also, but then they have the much larger and much efficient infrastructure. Here it has not been so, but still I would say, for instance, UP RERA has started off some bit of hearings, and I know for a moment Haryana is planning something on those lines, and in the same fashion NCLT has already started, and some bit of urgent hearings are happening. But to actually have a normal course, I think there will be a delays, there will be some piling up, and that you can't avoid. For all practical purposes, delivering justice is not an easy job, with and it cannot be done over at times over video conferencing. We can have any number of webinars, not delivery of justice in such a fashion. Yes, it could be done, but then it has its own limitations. Now, having said that, if you look at probably Rajasthan RERA has come up with, and some bit of MP, I've seen a wonderful thing, MP coming up, that they have sort of said that we will not do any coercive measures. For instance, recovery refunds that have been there. So there probably the buyers have to wait a little longer, looking at from the perspective of recoveries and all. So there will be a little bit of a dampener. But then if you can't get money in such a situation from a developer, he can't pay money. So probably that is one bit. If you see on the other side, flip side of the coin, it's a right decision also. You may agree to the period, you may not agree to the period. You may say that it could be more structured, that more equitable, that a certain percentage should have been delivered, should not have been given out. But that is something which can be argued. But overall, I think there will be some bit of difficulty and delay.
Yeah, so we've got time for just one last question. So I'm going to sort of deviate from the topic for my last question, only because we've received an overwhelming number of questions, and that question, no points for guessing, is this the right time to buy? So I'd like, all of my panelists to give me their take on, do they believe this is the right time to buy? Yes, no, and why? Abhishek, let's start with you.
So, in this whole course of pandemic, and this is like an unprecedented situation, all of us have realized that safety and security is only at home. We've all been at home during this whole lockdown period. There are a lot of restrictions if you are on rent and other things, which is not the case if you own your own home. So I think that has clearly come out in our research and our engagement with the customers. Second is that, your principal protection and growth in today's environment, where would you put your capital? Would you put your capital in gold, or would you put your capital in the stock markets or debt funds or mutual funds? I think we have seen what has happened in last few months. Real estate in that sense is a hard asset which you own, and over life, if you study over decades, normally, it will land up giving you very, very substantial returns and with principal protection. So I think that is very, very important to consider when you're looking at taking a decision on where you want to keep your capital. Would you want to keep it in the environment is also a question. I mean, we are seeing all kinds of things that are happening. Other than that, I think what is very important is that real estate cycle has been kind of at the bottom for a very, very long time. My view is that substantial number of people, and this is coming from the fact that we are engaging on ground with a lot of people, have realized that this is the right time to get in, because we've been at the bottom for a long time, and now the only way forward is up, to my mind. Prices have bottomed out completely. If you are an end user or an investor, this is, to my mind, a great time to take a buying decision. Especially if you are an end user and you can take benefits of things like credit link schemes from the government for the affordable housing, then even more so. And the opportunities, as long as you are very, very careful about who you are buying from, I think this is a great time to go ahead and buy. That's broadly my point of view.
Mr. Rao, what do you think? Right time to buy, or should we not buy? What's your take?
experts have been selling. So I am more of a conservative lawyer, and so yes, I agree with Abhishek to the extent that if the credentials and the product is right, and for those people who are wanting to invest, that they are asking this question, and I'm assuming that they have got enough pockets full, at least arranged for in their back-end security, should be the right time to buy, being simply because we have, as you rightly pointed out, have been seeing a downslide in the real estate market, a lot of moderation happening even without COVID. And there's not been, at least for 3 years, anything which would say, at least 5 years, anything to say that it has been going up in a fashion that it used to be. So definitely this period would be one period when developers would also like to improve their cash flows and would certainly come out with nice bit of a package if you are ready to take one. Diwali, not bonanza, I would not say COVID. So something like that. So maybe yes, but please be sure to have your developer track record, liquidity certainly checked before you take any such kind of decision.
Mr. Modi, you get the last word. So
Yeah.
what's your verdict?
Yes.
To buy or not to buy?
Definitely, yes. I agree with Abhishek and Venkatji, both of them. And at the same time, I would like to tell all the people who are just listening to us that this is really the right time, because in last 4 or 5 years, we have seen a lot of disruptions. And by this time, we very well know that what kind of brands, which brands are able to deliver your home in timely manner, irrespective of this lockdown period and this 5-6 months delay in your timeline. Apart from that, if you have identified your developer, your region, then I would advise that people must buy, because after so much of competitions and disruptions, the prices are also at, I believe, at rock bottom, and they know that if a guy is selling at 4,000, the project will be delivered or not. And in the same region, if a guy is selling at 5,000, so I have seen in recent months that the product which is at higher price is getting sold, and the project which are selling at a lesser price are not getting sold. Just for an example, I'll tell you, on 22nd of February, we launched one project. In 7 days, we sold more than 300 apartments in 7 days. This kind of response we got because of our past track record. So I would suggest all the listeners that this is the right time, and you can just evaluate that what kind of the prices are there in the market and who are able to deliver, and the developer whom you can trust, you must go for the property.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your inputs. That's all that we have time for today. Thank you, audience, for tuning in. We will be seeing you soon. Till then, stay safe and stay healthy.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Venkatji.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Amit ji.
Thank you, Amit ji.
Thank you, Venkat.
Thank you.